Okay, good morning. I want to start the next Perek, and we're gonna look through probably half the Psukim just to get an overview of the Psukim. And even in the very beginning, I'm gonna stop after probably one Pasuk just to go over this really fascinating article. And it's something it's one of those sort of like general knowledge things, which is very good in Tanakh, which I'm sure you've heard, but it's worth going over. So the beginning of Perek Hay, again, is one of these things where one pasuk seems to be sort of out of place. So you're not sure, does it belong to the last Perek or why does it belong in this Perek? But you could see there's a break in it, meaning there's it's a parsha break, and it probably can go either place. It kind of stands alone, but it says, Vayihi kishmoa kol malchei ha'emari asher be'ever ha'yarden yama v'chol malchei ha'knani asher al hayam eis asher havish Hashem es mei ha'yarden mipnei bnei Yisrael ad Avram vayimas levavam v'lo hayavam od ruach mipnei bnei Yisrael. That's a lot of pasuk right there, by the way. That's a lot. So in the English translation, they put it as one paragraph, but in the Hebrew, it's actually it's a standalone paragraph. So what happened when all the Amorite kings, the Melech Amori, Malchei Amori, who were on the western side of the Jordan, and the Canaanite kings who were by the sea, they heard that Hashem had dried up the Jordan's water for the sake of the children of Israel until they had crossed. Their hearts melted. Can you do me a favor, hit the green button? Their hearts melted, and there was no longer any spirit within them because of the children of Israel. So what we're doing is we're setting the table. Good morning. In conclusion, sorry. The text is setting the table for this unbelievable conquest or something that's going to be taking place in a very in due time. Okay. Now the word vayimas levavam, their hearts melted. That's something that we already saw before. It's going to happen that the people are so, they shamu amim yirgazun. That's what we said in Az Shiur, which we just read a couple of weeks ago, that when the sea split in the Yam Suf, that everybody heard and they trembled. And when the spies went and they checked out, and Rachav, etc., said, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is really bad. This is like they're scared of you. They're scared of you coming." Okay, so the first thing that I want to look at, and again, this is a general Tanakh knowledge piece, which is really interesting. I'm going to put it on the screen in a second, and it says that all the Malchei Amori asher be'ever hayarden yama. Okay, so when it says yama. What does it mean? Right, west. So you know the song. See, dinner and a show. I love. So we have when we talk about directions in Tanakh, we say Yama, Kedma, Tzafona, Negba. Why can't we just say Mizrach, Marav? Right, Tzafon, Darom. Right? So look at this article that I have for you. I'm gonna share my screen. This is a great article. I remember seeing this a number of years ago. I mean, a lot of people have written about this. Can you see it on the page? You see it? Okay. Mm-hmm. So this piece is on Or Sameach's website. This Rav Reuven Chaim Klein has a thing called "What's in a Word." It's worth looking at, and he has a number of different. Etymology is very, very important, especially when you're learning Tanakh and you realize that there are no synonyms, and understanding where words come from, where names come from. It's a lot. It's very interesting. So here, let's look at this. So, Yama, how does the song go? Yama v'kedma tzafona v'nehegma. Ufarasta. Okay. I dare you to get that out of your head. You know how I can get it out of your head? 1877 cars for kids, KRS cars for kids. Okay, dare you to get that out of your head. I want for this one. Right? Yeah.
I think we should all sing it together now.
There you go. I don't know. So the Bible 28:14 relates that when Hashem blesses Jacob and tells him that his descendants' population will burst forth in all directions, He uses the following verbs to refer to those directions: Yam, west, Kedem is east, Safon, north, and Negev, south. However, in Devarim, when Hashem tells Moshe to look at the Holy Land, which he couldn't go in, he says, look at all four directions: Yam, Safon, Mizrach, Teman. In essence, while the words for west and north remain the same, the Bible uses two different words to mean east: Kedem and Mizrach, and south is Negev and Teman. What's the difference between these synonymous doublets? I mean, there's a couple of words you don't usually see together: synonymous doublets. I've heard of rhyming couplets, but never synonymous doublets.
One of them is more geographic. It tells you exactly what's there.
Very good, very good. Yeah, what?
Did we say with no synonyms?
Yes. Well, there aren't, but there are synonymous doublets
Okay.
and rhyming. And we have a writer here, so we can talk about rhyming couplets. Okay. Which I thought of you. I got the JNF magazine. So yeah, so yesterday. So this matter actually becomes quite complicated upon the realization, if you're Canadian, that the Hebrew language has 3 words for every one of the 4 directions. Okay, this is really cool. So as we'll see below, the different words for the 4 directions focus on different aspects of those directions and are generally based on either the movements of the sun or certain topographical characteristics of the Holy Land. Anything to do with Israel has to always take into account where you are in Israel relative to everything else. Okay, and this very Israel-centric position that we have when we look at the rest of the world, like where we say Ola Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is considered the center of the world, and you always go up to Yerushalayim, and everything else is down. Like one of my pet peeves, and when Eliane watches this afterwards, but she knows she keeps a list of all my pet peeves. I don't have many. I'm not like irritable like that, but one of my pet peeves is when people, let's say down and up the wrong way. Like, I'm going down to Boston. No, you're not. No, Boston's, like that area is like north of here. You're not going down to Canada. No, you're not. But that's just me. But when it's Israel, we're always going up to Israel. Okay. So Rabbeinu Bechaya. Now this is Rabbeinu Bechaya, Rabbeinu Bachya, depending on how you pronounce it. Anyway, in these Perush and Chumash from the Middle Ages, classic Perush and Chumash explains that the word Yam literally means sea, and is also used to refer to the west because the Mediterranean Sea lies at the west side of the Holy Land. So if you're looking at Israel, particularly the Jewish people now have just crossed in from Jordan. Okay, so the westernmost part, the California coast of Israel, is the Mediterranean. That's why west is Yama. Okay, the west is also called Ma'arav because as the sun sets, the shapes of the shadows become mixed up. Me'urav. So if you're very daring, let's say, and the next time you're in Israel and you go to like an Israeli grill type restaurant, ask for me'orav.
Me'orav Yerushalmi.
Yeah, you know what you're gonna get. Okay. Yo, you give me the faces. You don't know? You want to just order it and be surprised, or do you like eating things like spleen and? Yeah, no. Okay, that's like you got to have like a kishkis for that to eat that kind of stuff. Anyway, yes, correct. That's correct. The third, the word achar.
Is that also to do with Mariv? Is that all the same? Like
Yeah, so Ma'ariv, which means that nighttime, the nighttime prayer, Erev, has to do with the sunset. And he says here, the images are mixed up, but we never call Ma'ariv, Yam or anything like that. Because that's a time versus a direction. Third, the word acharon, which literally means last, also means west because it's the last place along the horizon where the sun is located before setting in the evening. Okay, now there are 3 words for east: Mizrach, Kedem, and Panim. Now, when we talk about east, we generally say Mizrach because let's say when we daven, if you're somewhere, the question is which way is Mizrach? So if I take out my phone app on my on my Siddur app, the phone. So one of the menus is Mizrach. Right. See that? And it tells you which way you have to, which way is Mizrach, which, to face. So it's not always accurate, and you have to use the Apple iPhone compass as well to make sure they line up. Whenever we daven in a Shiva home, it's always like all the experts come out. That's east. That's east. That's east. East. Okay. But when you're in Israel, Mizrach does not come into play because in Israel you face Yerushalayim. So if you're in, I don't know, let's say you're in Afula for some reason. Afula is famous for one thing, by the way. You know what?
לא.
Come on, Mimi.
בית חולים?
Garinim.
נכון, גרעיני עפולה.
The best Garinim come from, the sunflower seeds are from Afula. They're actually trying to build up a new religious town there, for Olim to buy it because it's less, because everywhere else is just, overpriced. Everybody's, out of the market. But if you're in Afula, which is, north central Israel, and you're gonna die, you look south, you down south. You face south. They say which way is Yerushalayim, not which way is Mizrach. So, but we always use the term Mizrach. Okay, so let's see why. So Mizrach is related to the word Zarach, which is shine, which is when we talk about the sunrise, we call it Zrichat Hashemesh. Refers to the direction in which the sun first shines in the morning. Okay, so Zrichat Hashemesh, Zricha, or we just use the term for nates, or sunrise, is in the east. Okay, Kedem is related to the word Kodem, early or forward, and refers to the fact that the rising sun first shines from the east. And the word Panim, face words, also means east because when Adam was created, the front of his body faced eastward. Interesting, okay? And we always use to say, Kedem also means before, Began Eden be Kedem, or East of Eden. You remember that miniseries? East of Eden. That's also based on the Psukim. Okay. And as mentioned above, the common word for north is tzafon. The commentaries offer several explanations for the etymology of the word. Some compare the word tzafon to tzafun, which means hidden. It's 6 weeks until Pesach, because in the northern parts of the world, the Arctic zone, the influence of the sun is hidden as the cold temperatures there obscure the sun's warmth. So has anyone ever been there way, way up north where you have either white nights or you have, no sun ever? No, I haven't been there either. It's a really problematic, let's say, if you go up to these places in the summer, what time does Shabbos end? Shabbos ends on Tuesday or something. It's bizarre when you start, and it's very, very complicated. People go to sleep and they wake up on Sunday morning and make Havdalah. If you take one of these, these tours or something, I don't know. So the sun is hidden. Alternatively, because the sun has generally remained south of the celestial equator, the north side is considered hidden from the sun's presence. Okay. Others claim that Tzafon is related to the word Sophia, right? Sophia, Sophit, is a lookout of some sort, and refers to the fact that one can determine north by gazing towards the heavens and following the northern star, a guiding star. Okay. And another approach, hard as the word Safon refers, now we said geographic, somebody mentioned earlier, identified by scholars as Jebel Akra, on the border between modern day Turkey and Syria, a mountain which may or may not still be there today, I don't know, based on an earthquake. Mountain mentioned in the Bible which lies due north of the Holy Land. A mountain that was a har had to be Safon, Hart Safon, not Hart Sofim, Hart Safon, but it's related, so if you have to look out, but something that's directly north is, in other words, there's a waypoint that is directly north of here. Okay, just like we talk about the Northern Star, that's a waypoint on the ground. Now, the Talmud sometimes uses the Aramaic word estan to mean north. Gemara Ksubas, Rabbeinu Bachya proposes that the word estan may be related to the Aramaic word asuta, which means health, and alludes to the fact that the north wind possesses certain healing properties. The Gemara in Yevamos. In fact, some people have a custom of exclaiming asuta or gesundheit in Yiddish when hearing another sneeze, so as to bless him with good health. You ever wonder why we say gesundheit? So it's a Perek Hay Rabbi Eliezer, I believe. It's found in the end of Bereshis. They said that until the time of Yaakov Avinu, that when people would sneeze, they would die. And only when he came, so in the time of Yaakov Avinu, people would just sneeze and not die. Thank God. Oh, that's how we say, God bless you, or asuta, mimi, gesundheit. You don't have to cry. This is not, you're getting emotional over this. Very good. But it's like an interesting thing. Like all these words are sort of interconnected. Gesundheit, asuta, related. Okay. Now, finally, the word darom. Darom means south, and the commentaries explain that darom is a portmanteau of the words derech yom. darom, derech yom, the path of the day, because the sun generally remains in the southern hemisphere of the celestial map during the day. And the south is also called Negev, which means dry, because the southern part of Israel is, of course, the Negev desert.
Ignorance was important too.
Ask the writer over here.
I think it's like a colloquialism that combines the two words. So it's like not really a word, but it's took the beginning of derech and yom and became darom.
Siri, what does portmanteau mean? A large trunk or suitcase, typically made of stiff leather. Okay, no.
Nope.
The second definition is word blending the sounds and combining the meanings of two others. For example, motel from motor and hotel. So what is yotel then in Manhattan on the west side? What is that? Okay. Or brunch, breakfast or lunch. Okay.
It's called helchem in Hebrew. Helchem, when you combine two words, like
Yeah. Like, so this word is not fancy enough. I need a fancy Hebrew word too. Helchem.
בדיוק, yes.
Is helchem two words?
לא, hey, lamet, chet, mem. It describes two words that you combine to one. Migdalor, kolnoa. Kolnoa is kol and noah. Migdalor, migdal im or. So
Kaduregel.
the grammatical ביטוי.
Right, or kaduregel.
כן.
Because it's not kadur regel, it's one word, kaduregel. Okay.
בדיוק, כן.
This was coined in a sense, by Lewis Carroll on Through the Looking Glass in 1871. See, we learn all sorts of things in this class.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so there are two more words for north and south, which you might be familiar with from another context. Teman Yamim, right? Yamin, and Smol. The Bible uses the words right and left to refer to south and north, respectively. This understanding presupposes that eastward is one's frame of reference, because, as we mentioned above, Adam was created facing eastwards. Therefore, because one facing eastwards encounters north to his left and south to his right, the very words for north and south could be left and right. Interesting, right? So if you're facing hold on. Oh, look who's here. If you're facing eastwards, if you encounter the north was left, south is right, the very words for north can be left and right. It's an interesting geographic anomaly. The Hebrew words for left and right are found in place names near Gulf of Aden between Africa and Arabia. One traveling northwards in the Gulf of Aden will approach Yemen, related to Yemen, on his right, and Somalia, related to Smol, on his left. Okay, that's some cool stuff. I mean, I just had to share it because it's I don't know, it's just cool, right? It's just so keep this. This is just, you can keep these. You're good. So, by the way, great Shabbos table conversation. Great, if you're hosting a cocktail party and it's kind of like boring and you need a little like pick me up. Here you go. But you ever wonder why we call it east, west, north, south, and Yama Vaketma? Maybe we should all sing the song and let's figure it out. Right? Okay.
My kids were discussing last week, because if Mizrach is still Mizrach, if you're not west of Yerushalayim, so this.
Right. So there's actually an interesting halachic question of when we daven, we face Mizrach, but if we want to be like purely linear about it, obviously going around globe, we're not really facing Yerushalayim. We should really be facing southeast, right? Or maybe go the other way. Okay. So for years and years in the old YU based medrash, not the current, not when they built the new one, but in the old YU based medrash, if you ever daven there, you would see this very strange thing where half the people would be facing the ark and half the people would be facing the corner, because they felt like the true direction of that way, like typical, YU. So, but you have places like that, and it's also was an issue. Like, what happens if shuls are not built purely east? It happens. It can happen that shuls are not based facing east. I'm just thinking your shuls, like it faces you have to be oriented. You have to have a sense of direction, but because when you think that the sanctuary faces Route 10, it doesn't. It faces parallel to Route 10 in suburban Torah in the main sanctuary. It's like the long way. Like when you drive up the driveway on the side, you're driving in front of the Aron Kodesh, and that's why it faces up Route 10 I say up because of the hill, up Route 10, which is really eastward, like here, so it's like, so this we're facing here is the same way that the main sanctuary and suburban Torah faces, like that. And you have to sort of like, put in your head. Not everybody gets directions. Not everybody is very good with spatial relations, things like that. Okay. The next thing I want to share with you again from Rabbi Hatton also, this is really important to understand. I love how he brings in also the geography, topography of Canaan. So he wrote this book, Rabbi Michael Hatton, on this is part of the Magid series on Tanakh. They have on pretty much every word in Tanakh. Like Erica did one on Esther. We should be reviewing it now for the time. Okay. So I'll share with you what he writes. He says, before we embark on the chapters of conquest and settlement, Gewalt, settlements. You want me to get political already? No, Shelly's not here. I have to make sure I have to see if she's we'll see if she watches the recording and see what she says. So, I was supposed to actually be in Israel this week, but I couldn't for a number of reasons. So like all my, from the Israel Bonds Rabbis trip, and they're all texting me like, oh, where are you? We miss you, So they're sending me pictures, giving me FOMO. It's not fair. So before we go, it's important to be aware that some salient geographical and political features of the Canaanite landscape. Now this is good. Remember I talked to you about the fists? When you talk about, mountain ridge in the state of Israel. So the land of Canaan west of the Jordan River has a variety of climatic and topographic zones. You just think about it, sort of, if you take a world map, if you would zoom out and you'd see that Israel's sort of in the center of a lot of things, meeting place between, Asia, Africa, coming down from Europe, you can understand why people say it's the center of the world. So, although constituting a relatively small landmass, Canaan forms a natural bridge between Africa and Asia and contains a great diversity of landscapes. The weather's differences in Israel, you have basically all 4 seasons you could get in Israel, and like the same trip. The only other place I've ever heard of that has that is Hawaii. Hawaii, you can go places that has like such wildly different weather at the same time, depending on where you go. It's also one of those places that they say is really as nice as they say it is. It is, right? It's like, I went there when I was a little kid, so I don't really remember. Class trip, we should go back. Would be a good trip. Class trip, we should go. Why not? We'll go to Hawaii. We want to study the biblical roots of Hawaii. We want to know how to spell Hawaii in Hebrew. We want to know, is Hawaii over the international date line or not, and all the there you go which I said at the Grand Canyon, which is just phenomenal. Anyway, the snow-covered peaks of the Hermon range to the north give way to the verdant rolling countryside of the Galilee, which then abruptly descends to the fertile and hot valleys of the Kinneret Basin. From here, the landscape rises again to form the limestone hills of the central region and the arid and barren cliffs of the Negev to the south. From west to east, the flat and mostly traversable Mediterranean seashore yields to the foothills that rise to form the central hills. But then the landscape suddenly cascades into the Jordan Rift and finally trails off into the desolate and stark deserts to the east. I mean, just that description alone just makes me long for home. If you see in the airport, especially where they sell to the Christians who are leaving, they have those 3D topographical maps, a little, rectangle, but it has like the bump on it. You can see the ridges, you can see this. The crest of the central hill country constitutes the watershed, dividing the fertile coastal valleys and western hill terraces that are watered by the rain clouds spawned by the Mediterranean from the inhospitable and desiccated wilderness to the east. The contrasts of this land are highlighted by the fact that while the Sea of Kinneret is only a substantial body of fresh water in the area, the Dead Sea, only 120 kilometers to the south, contains the highest salinity of any sea in the world. And of course, it's slowly disappearing, as we know, and they have to keep moving the roads and the sinkholes. Okay. The variegated terrain, by the way, just reading these 2 pages, I could have done better on the SATs. The variegated terrain of Canaan had the pronounced effect of making political unity difficult to achieve at all periods of Canaanite and later Israelite history. So this is an important part, that the terrain leads to political problems. The tribes that inhabited Canaan tended to form independent city-states that controlled their immediate regions and little else. Frequently, these cities were in conflict with each other and rarely cooperated on matters of regional importance. Imagine that. Can you imagine that? If that region, if you can find it imaginable, that people don't get along and they're fighting over something or over territory. Okay, just try to go out of your imaginary box and try to imagine that. Frequently, during no period of Canaanite history, we find the development of political models based upon allegiance to an absolute and central authority, such as were to be found in Canaan's southwest in Egypt or to its northeast in Mesopotamia. Those other two realms were both characterized by great and undifferentiated river valleys, fertile grounds, the Fertile Crescent, right, for nurturing absolutist models that could control and manage the resources successfully. In Canaan, the Amorite tribes that originally hailed from Asia Minor and the lands northeast of the Jordan inhabited the hill country, while the fertile coastal plains were settled and extensively farmed by the more materially advanced people whose towns dotted the seaboard all up the way to Phoenicia. The above cited verse is quite precise in speaking of numerous Amorite kings and Canaanite kings. Again, the before the Jewish people are even like really doing anything inside, it talks about the Malchei Hamari, which are in Aver Hayardain in the Jordan Valley, sort of, and all the Canaanite kings, which are on the sea. Okay. The above, so it's quite precise in speaking of them, for the land was effectively carved up among assorted petty fiefdoms. The importance of this fact for the people of Israel should now be obvious. The task of conquest will be made easier by the absence of any united front that can oppose them. The confederacies of Canaanite city-states hurriedly hatched in the aftermath of the fall of Jericho and Ai, which we'll see in Perek Yud, present much less of a threat than a cohesively united polity. As we shall see, the conquest of Canaan will unfold as the successive falls of individual towns and cities. So that's why when we talk about 31 kingdoms and 31 kings, it's not they took over one land. They took over like little pieces of this as they went along, on and on and on and on and on, which is also perhaps a bit of foreshadowing for the problems that we face. I don't know, ad hayom hazeh. Is that what's the biggest problem that we have in succeeding as a nation is ourselves. When did Jewish people? First of all, we've just read in last week's parsha, it says that when the Jewish people came to Har Sinai, it says, Vayichan sham neged har, famous Rashi, k'ish echad b'leiv echad. They came as one person with one heart. That was probably the last time that happened, the first and last time. When do we come together? When do we have Jewish unity?
Milchama.
Right, when bad things happen. When terrible things happen, when there's a terrorist attack, chas v'shalom, when there's we come together. We're great in a crisis. Not so great when things are going okay. That's a constant message that we have throughout Tanakh and throughout Chazal, and here also, just hinting at that. But to have the opportunity to look at the geographical landscape and how it affects, or how it's going to affect, the ultimate conquest is really, really fascinating, and also to get our direction straight. So, okay, I just have to make sure. Okay, but I have to tell you a very funny story. It's going to be recorded, but that's fine, because if anybody watches this far, then they deserve to hear the story. So I mentioned in Shul HaShabbos how my son has access to a device, and somehow it's hooked up to the Amazon cart. So I go in and I find $2,500 worth of stuff in the Amazon cart. Thank God he didn't buy it. I don't think he could buy it. I think he could just sort of add stuff. Okay. I'm like, who in the world put $2,500 worth of stuff? And I see there's like a $400 Lego set, and there's this and that, like, God bless him. Okay. So there's like save for later, delete completely. So one day, yeah, at least I know what he wants, right? That's why you get now. No, there's no secrets. Everybody knows what you want, or you know what they're getting you because you get the alerts. Oh, you're. So I see one day in the cart, there's a like a crucifix necklace in the cart, mamish, like a crucifix in the cart. Like what? So we knew obviously who it had to be, but like I can't understand for the life of me why. So he says, he plays on his ice hockey team, and he goes, and all the boys on my team, a lot of them have this T necklace, and I wanted a T necklace. So I looked up, I typed in T necklace, and that's what came up, and added to the cart.
Yeah.
Right. So I thank God he didn't buy it. Like, oh, can you imagine the rabbi's kid has a cross.
Oy vavoy.
What's a T?
A cross.
T. Oh,
A T.
The plate.
like a cross, like,
Actually, the hockey players are actually wearing crosses.
yeah, on his team, whatever. The kids like on his team, they're not Jewish. So like they have, he sees that they have a crucifix, whatever, cross. He's like, I thought it was cool. I want a tea necklace. That's what he called it, tea necklace. It's a hard one to explain why he can't have a tea necklace. Anyway, yeah, so that's these things are interesting. Okay, let's see the psukim now, and then we have probably 2 through 9, and explain the next step in the process of inheriting the land. Ba'isahi Amar Hashem, pasuk base. Ba'isahi Amar Hashem li Yeshua aseh lecha charbos tzurim v'shuv molas b'nei Yisrael shenis. So Hashem says, Yeshua, okay, you thought that crossing the sea was hard. Now comes the hard part. I want you to make for yourselves sharp knives, and you have to circumcise the children of Israel a second time. What? Now, when was the first time? The first time was at Har Sinai, as we'll actually conclude reading in this week's parsha, chapter 24. They didn't do it all the time in the Midbar. One of the reasons given is because they might have had to travel frequently, even though retrospectively, no, they didn't travel all that much frequently. They had a couple of years where they moved around, but 38 years they pretty much stayed still. They didn't go too far. They moved once or twice. It's in Parshas Maseh. But when a person's journeying, that's why we don't give a bris milah. That's the whole story with Moshe and Tzipporah, who's the first Mohelet, and she saw the angel came and was going to kill Moshe or the baby or one of them because she didn't give a bris. But Moshe's argument was, well, we're traveling towards Egypt. I don't think we should give a bris. Okay, nowadays we don't go anywhere anyway, but we don't hold that. We give a bris at 8 days. And also talking about what we mentioned, that what was alluded to in the article about the north wind, that in the desert there's no north wind, which allows for healing. So they didn't want to give the bris because they wouldn't be able to heal properly. Whatever it is that they didn't do it, now's the time Hashem says, okay, now you're going to do it. Now you're going to have a bris. Now, you don't find any reaction, thank God. But could you imagine, like, you get up and shul, okay, we have a great way. We're moving into our new building. And before we take all your talis bags and your candy and your books, whatever, there's one thing that we have to do. Everybody has to have a bris milah. Okay, Rabbi, I'm out. Okay. Vayaslo Yehoshua charos tzurim vayamal es bnei Yisrael el givas aralos. So Yeshua, he made sharp knives for himself, right? All the knives out, and he circumcised the children of Israel.
Why is it in singular? Like he really did it by himself?
It's a good question. I think it's sort of he led the charge. I don't see. I thought about that. I don't see many of the Mefarshim say too much about it. But it would seem that kind of like, because he's leading, so in this kind of like majestic singular, if there's such a thing, and they did it in a place called Givat HaAralot, the hill of the foreskins. Okay, it's not unusual. It's not unusual for Tanakh to name a place after what happened there.
I know, but usually they're not so graphic.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if the
name Riva, I'm a little okay with that.
Yeah, Beersheba. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. What was the old joke about the guy who's in and he's waiting for his wife to give birth in the Israeli hospital, and they come out and they say, Mazel, you have twins. He's like, I'm from Givatayim. And they come out the next guy and he said, you have eight kids your wife just gave birth to. And he's like, oh my God, I'm from Kiryat Shmona. The next guy passes out and like, what's the matter? He goes, I'm from Mea Sharim. He's like, like a version of that kind of joke. So I don't think the archaeologists have quite dug up this site yet. Let's hope that they never do. Let's hope that it's not really just a name of a place. Givat HaAralot. It's not very high up on the tourist destinations. You can imagine, like, you take your tour guide in Israel. Where do you want to go? I want to see this place, Givat HaAralot. Okay, don't. What? V'zeh hadavar asher mol Yehoshua, kol ha'am hayotzei miMitzrayim hazicharim, kol anshei milchama, meisi b'midbar b'derech b'tzeis miMitzrayim. Now, we have to have always a little history. Anytime we do something ritual, as, of course, like the whole Pesach story, we have to have a little bit of a history lesson. This is the reason why Yehoshua circumcised them, aside from the fact that Hashem commanded him to. The entire people that came from Egypt, the males, the men of war, they died in the wilderness on the way, and they went forth from Egypt. Kimulim hayu kol ha'am hayotziim, v'chol ha'am hayoladim b'midbar b'derech b'tzeitza mitzrayim lamalu. The people that went forth were circumcised, but the people that were born in the wilderness on the way, after they left Egypt, did not have a bris milah, for the reasons I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Ki 40 shana halchu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar, ad tom kol hagay anshem l'chama yotzim mitzrayim, asher lo shamu b'kol Hashem, asher nishba Hashem lehem levilti herosem es haaretz, asher nishba Hashem lavasam l'seis lanu eretz zavas chalav u'devash. Another very, very long-winded pasuk, because for 40 years they wandered, or they journeyed in the wilderness until that generation, the first generation, until they died. The men of war who went forth from Egypt, they didn't listen to the voice of Hashem about Hashem had sworn not to show them the land that Hashem swore to their forefathers to give us a land flowing with milk and honey. In other words, we never miss an opportunity to remind them of the chet of that generation that didn't merit to go into the land of Israel. Of course, we know why they didn't go in, because after the sin of the spies, which took place in year 1 and 2, that whole episode, okay, really at the end of, after year 1 is over, and then year 2 starts, and then we have the episode of the Meraglim, the episode of the spies, and bear that timeline in mind, by the way, because it says that for 40 years, you have kids that were born after the Exodus didn't have a bris. So you could theoretically have, 40-year-olds having a bris. This is like Rabbi Kanelsky's dream, right? Bris Avram, Bris Avram? Rabbi Kanelsky is from Hillside, and he has an organization called Bris Avram, and he brings a lot of the Russian immigrants that came over, and he makes sure that they have a bris milah. He does weddings for them. He's a tzaddik, and he's responsible for putting on the menorah and the Lincoln Tunnel and this and that. I have a saying, Rabbi Kanelsky. I say, if you don't know him, I said, trust me, he knows you. That's what I always say. He's a tzaddik. So sometimes I have these guys like, oh, I was a sandik at a bris today for like a 30-year-old guy. Like that's a lot of things in one sense that I don't want to hear. But people who are grown-ups, they didn't have a bris, and here we have a chance also to say the word zavas chalav u'devash. I always love to mention that when, the Torah mentions several, I think it's 12 or 13 times. I have to look it up. I don't have it right in front of me. 12 or 13 times that the Chumash uses this phrase zavas chalav u'devash. That's another song you want to sing. Chalav u'devash. I go to Israel a lot, and I certainly don't go for the milk, and I don't go for the honey. So it's like date honey. What's the milk?
Chalav shel ez.
Chalav shel eitz?
Ez.
Tree milk? Oh, yeah. Goat milk? Oh, good. Shkoyach. So you ever have the milk in Israel where you have to have like the bag and the snip, and then it just stink, whatever, okay? Rav Reuven Margolios, in one of his svarim, and he brings from a Medrash source that chalav could very well mean white wine. That I could buy into. There is some phenomenal white wine that comes out of Israel. So when we have a zavas chalav u'devash, we want to have a white wine to fulfill this. Okay, that I can have. And like date honey, okay, people, that's also pretty popular in Israel. Fine. But that's the word used to describe Israel on many occasions. V'ez b'neihem hekim tachtam osam mal Yehoshua, ki arelim hayu ki lo malo osam badarach. V'hi kasher temu kol hagay li'imo v'yishu tachtam machne al chayosam. So he raised their children in their stead. In other words, the parents came out of Egypt. The kids didn't have a bris once the Exodus took place. The parents didn't make it. So he raised them. So then those are the ones that Yeshua circumcised, because they were uncircumcised since they didn't circumcise them on the way. When all the nation had finished being circumcised, they remained in their place until they had healed, until they recuperated. Now, the word for like Givat HaAralos is an arel or arelim. When you see the word arel, I'm not talking about train stations. Arel means someone who is uncircumcised. What comes to mind when you hear the word in Hebrew arelim?
Goyim.
A what?
Goyim. Lo Yehudim. Shelo nimod.
So does that mean that someone who is not circumcised is not Jewish?
Lefi Tanakh. Okay.
Wow, you're so controversial. Wow.
I don't know, when I hear the word Arel, it makes me think of Arel Sfatayim, like Moshe.
Okay, very good. Yeah. It says, Moshe says on a couple of occasions, V'ani aral sfatayim, I have uncircumcised lips. I mean, like, I don't know what to say. I'm not completed. right? Because a bris is called, by the way, hisalech lefanai v'heyei tamim. Someone who has a bris is actually considered complete. It's a weird thing that you're complete by removing something. Okay, so arel is lacking something, lacking completion. Okay, but if you would go a little further in the story of the Exodus, in Parshas Bo, okay, there's a very important ritual that takes place, which is very connected to the word arelim. Okay, and that is, of course, the Karban Pesach. The Karban Pesach, we're told in Parshas Bo, that anybody who is uncircumcised cannot be a part of the Karban Pesach. Now, you'll ask yourself, what is the connection between circumcision and Karban Pesach? So we have a bris tomorrow. I'm so excited. I have a bris tomorrow, and when we have the bris, I used to not be able to stand. Like, the guy would take out his bag and I would pass out. I've gotten so much better that I could be up there and I don't really watch, but and we do the bris, and then we say all this like heebie-jeebie stuff. And at one point, the mile, he dips the gauze into the wine, and we say v'omalach b'damai chayi, suck on it, v'omalach b'damai chayi, and the kid forgets that he was crying because now the kid is like blitzed. He's totally drunk. He's having, hopefully they use real wine. Okay, so the pasuk in the Navi says, and you by your blood will be your life, by your blood will be your life. So the Chazal say it represents two different types of blood that are covenant or an agreement with God. There's the blood of bris milah, and that's one part of the covenant, and the other one is the blood of the Karban Pesach. One needed the other, and they both happen at the same time. What's interesting, halachically speaking, is that those two share a unique distinction, and it's the first Mishnah in Maseches Krisos, that normally speaking, what happens if I have a positive commandment that I'm supposed to do and I don't do it? What's the punishment for that? Like, if a negative commandment, I'm not supposed to eat pork, and I eat pork in front of witnesses, and they say, don't do it, and if you do it, you're going to be in trouble, and I do it, what happens? So you get 39 lashes in the Beis Din. But what happens if I don't put on my tefillin? Put on your tefillin. I'm not putting on my tefillin. What happens if I do that? What's the punishment for that? Nothing. You just don't get the schar. You don't get the reward for having done. Now, but don't say that to your kids. But they're like, no, you got to put on your tefillin. Right? I mean, it's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but meaning there's no punishment for it. The two exceptions to that rule where even by the passive violation, because you can only violate a due commandment, a mitzvah say passively by not doing it, the only passive violation that carry with them a penalty are these two things, Karban Pesach and Bris Milah. If you don't have a Karban Pesach, if you don't bring it, or if you don't do a Bris Milah, the punishment is kares, excision. The only two that carry with them positive commandments with a actual penalty. Now, one can actually be repaired, the bris, if a person gets a bris later on in life. So obviously here in this case, they were not required because of technical reasons. So now that they could actually get the bris milah, they have to do it. But what also didn't happen after year one in the desert? We know year one it happened because it says in Parshas Baloscha. But after year one, for the rest of the time in the desert, what didn't take place? Karban Pesach. They did not bring the Karban Pesach in the Midbar at all. Part of it is because they didn't do it. Part of it is because they weren't circumcised. So now that they're going to be circumcised, what do you think the first thing that's going to happen is? And if you're going to look at the next page, we're going to have the Pesach offering. By the way, let's think about it. This all comes full circle. What date did they cross over? The 10th of Nisan. We know the date. It says specifically the 10th of Nisan. So they had a few days. One day that they're going to go zip back and forth to Gilgal and to Har Gerizim and Har Yevel, come back. Now they have a bris. They can recover after 3 days. Boom, we're ready for the Karban Pesach. Everything works out perfectly. So how they left Egypt and they're coming into Israel, bris milah, Karban Pesach, now they're going to be able to sort of like bring that back full circle and have Karban Pesach. So we'll see next time. We're going to look at some of the issues of the Karban Pesach as we get closer and closer to Pesach itself. But now we know how to tell our directions, our right from our left and everything. And Delila, nice to see your box. Maybe you're like in class with the kids and you're just like secretly watching. Is that what's happening here? Or are they off today? Like, I don't know. Is it a faculty in-service day? I don't know. But, anyway, it's great to see your box. And everybody enjoy. Oh, yes. She's saying yes. She's hiding in the closet from the kids and she's watching you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
תודה רבה. תודה.
Yeah.